network called Ethereal TV.
Okay,
So
you're doing a stream. Yeah, I did something like that in 23, and then I deconstructed it on the.
I remember because
It,
you and I talked about putting my show on there, and I wasn't. You
yeah.
something happened with your brother, or whoever was building it, or something. I couldn't remember.
Well, it was, the thing was, it wasn't, it was, as I understood it, had too many constructs from the old. You want to put this on the Storytelling Alchemist or on your profile?
I don't have access to that anymore, so just put it on
Okay.
my.
Okay,
Yeah.
got you. Yeah. All right. So
COVID,
it's,
they took all my social media down. So
yeah, I went through a lot of that stuff too. But yeah, so we did the Soulogy network. We had about 20, I was producing about 20 different people plus my shows. And think we did quite a few. I mean, it was quite a volume of work, but there was just elements that just weren't right. And I think probably there'll be another iteration at some point. But I think that there's a lot of evidence that there was a lot of deconstruction in 2024 and 2025.
yeah.
And so I think now, we're starting to build from the new. And I'm just making sure all the ones are on. Everybody's on. Okay. Far out. Wait a minute. Looks like we got. Oh, wait a minute. Maybe we didn't make it. Oh, there you are. Jeremy McDonald. Okay. Yeah. So, okay. So, yeah, that sounds like a cool idea that you're getting into. How are you originating the streaming network? Are you utilizing your own URL? Are you going through a streaming service or what?
No, the lady that's the CEO of the company, she's actually built it from the ground up. So
Yeah.
it'll be like a Discovery Plus where they have we'll have a live television portion,
Yeah.
and then we'll also have on demand like you do at Discovery Plus. So
Yeah. Yeah.
mine's gonna be, and they'll have seasons. I'll have like 6 episodes per
Oh,
season.
I see. Yeah, I've seen a lot of people do that. Are y'all doing it streaming or the other way? Is everything streaming?
It'll be like
Like YouTube?
Netflix. It'll be like
Yeah.
Netflix.
Okay. Yeah. So it's all
Stream live.
streaming. Yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we were doing. That's what we were doing. It was a little bit before the AI curve, so there were some elements there. But yeah, I'm very excited for you, man. Congratulations. And Jeremy McDonald, welcome back to Soulogy. It's been a while. It's been a while. I kind of put it in low drive, about 10 shows a month from about mid 23 till mid 25, but we're back up to about 45 a month now. And
Nice.
yeah, and so I've been reacquainting myself and reuniting with quite a few different people like yourself. And it's been anywhere from, 3, 4, 5, 6 years.
Yeah, the last time I saw you was in Sarasota. Oh no, the
No,
last time I saw you was in Largo because we did that event at the Center of Spiritual Living.
no, we did a show after that. I know we
Oh, did
did.
we? Okay.
Definitely did. I was in yeah, I remember that. That was awesome. That was in 2020, right when COVID hit.
Yep.
And yeah, that was a great experience and a really cool story out of that. My friends Eddie, God, I can't remember his last name right now. That's how good
Hensley?
of friends
Was
we
it
are.
Hensley?
Yeah, Eddie Hensley. That's right. Eddie Hensley, yeah.
Yeah,
Eddie
because they're in South
Hensley,
Dakota, right?
yeah, him and Robin, yeah. They met that day and they've been together ever since, right?
That's funny you should say that because I'd see Robin's posts and I was like, I know her.
Yeah.
Because and then I'd see her with Eddie and I'm like, how did they meet? So
Yeah, that's how they
that's
met.
funny.
Yeah. So what was happening? We were coming down we were coming from we went from Hawaii to the Northwest and then all the way across the country because we did a conference in what is it, Siesta Beach in that January, and um, then I was doing some shows. And I did a show for a lady that was in St. Pete Beach, and the lady that she was staying at her house on the spot offered me and my wife to stay in the house for a few months, like 10 houses from the beach, man. And we were like, okay, okay, we can do this. And right then COVID hit. But then, so my wife went out of town and went to go visit a friend in Kansas City. And then we connected, you and I.
Yeah.
And but as we were coming through Florida, I got ahead of myself. We ran into Robin, who was hanging out with another dude, right? And then we run into her uh, well, I ran into her at your event, but before I came to your event, I put out a post on Facebook, and I said, I'm trying to get something going here with my friend and Jeremy, and we're going to do something. Is there any DJs out there? I'd like to have a DJ. And Eddie had just pulled into town. He was there, and he's like, "Hey, yeah, man," because we'd done work together before. And I went and picked him up and went over to your place, and we had a hell of a time. And he met Robin, and that was a very powerful event, though. There was a lot of powerful testimonies, and
Yeah,
it
absolutely.
was a nice, it was a really nice ring to it. So, yeah, enough about that. Welcome back. And let's see what's going on. There's been a lot going on in 2025. It's almost over now.
Oh yeah.
There was a lot of deconstruction in 24. I know when the solstice came last year, um, came out of the solstice, and my soul told me, hey, everything that y'all came here to do, you did.
Yeah.
All of you, all of you. You may not fully grasp it right now, but you did it in the distortion in that 12-year period from the 2012 Mayan date to the solstice in 24.
Yeah.
And now you've entered uh, a different scenario. You've entered, you're not going against the current anymore. You're now going with the current, and it's going to take some time to get used to it.
Mhm.
And of course, again, there was a lot of deconstruction leading up to that, and I think a lot of people can attest to that. And then around mid-May, June, I heard, it's going to be a long, hot summer, and it damn sure was. More shedding and stuff like that. But then in the last quarter, it's really seemed to be starting to come together. It seems like people are starting to get the feel for this new energy. It's not operating like it used to. Things are very different, and it's early in the game. And so I'm really excited to see what your reflections are and what you're feeling. Because right now we're in this corridor, this solstice corridor that's been on full volume for me since the 8th of December. And it was just as it actually last night was the most, I had a tremendous 2 hour emotional transformation and lucid dreams and amazing lucid dreams. And I woke up totally depleted, like my soul got thrown back into my body. It was very powerful. I still haven't
Wow.
got my arms around it. But yeah, just kind of see what your feel is and talk
Well,
about your work and talk about whatever you want to talk about.
honestly, 2025 was a major shift for me. So, deconstruction is the great word for it because 2024, that's exactly what happened. 2023, I lost a really similar story to what you had many years ago. I lost a very high-paying job living in this gorgeous apartment, and Spirit said, "I need you to lay down and go to sleep or just rest." And I was like, you know how that feels. You're like, you want me to what? You want me to lay down and rest? So um, I did. I laid down and rested. A month later, my friend Virginia, she ended up on this big podcast, and things just went crazy. She gave out her email address, and we answered about 16,000 emails. So
Wow, what podcast was that?
the Jeff Mara podcast.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
So, anyways, long story short, 2024 came along. I moved out of that apartment, all that other kind of stuff. Really started getting, this business has always been kind of a calling for me, and but it was also had become kind of a hobby in a sense, not something that I was really. I declared, hey, this is what I'm going to do. I don't know if that makes any sense. And so 2024 was spent like kind of like shedding away and humbling me in a sense to get really more in tune with my soul. And so 2025, right around May, something just clicked, man. And I wrote this in 3 months. I hadn't
That's the
written
same. That's the same. What's the name of it? Sovereign mindset. Yeah, that's the same thing that happened to me. It was middle of May. Middle of May,
middle of May,
I
and I hadn't
jacked
written a
everything
book
up.
in
Yeah,
13 years.
that's
So
wild. That's incredible. I
Yeah.
know in like, but there was a surge as much as the summer brought the fire of uncovering shadow or deconstruction or whatever. It also brought, it seemed like, and it seemed like you're sharing it too, brought in this stream of creativity. I know in June, and although we had been lowered, lowered and gone, been traveling in lower gears, I'm still a little discombobulated from last night. But I think in the month of June, we pulled 4.5 million views. Now, that wasn't just shows, that was any post in the Soulogy network. And that to me was signifying that, yeah, the creativity is going to start to come out. So it sounds like it did it for you too, huh?
Absolutely. And and I call them like, I don't like the word download in a sense, but it was just like a flow of consciousness just coming through. And we can call that divine or spirit or whatever we want to call it. But there was a flow of creativity. And it just, you can relate to this. I would start to think something or feel something, and it would just pop right into existence. And so, and a bunch of my friends, we call it, you can't make this shit up. So, and because these things happen, and you're just like, wow. So what I'm feeling is that 2026 is going into a new level of consciousness where we would pray or set intentions or be out there, but things are really going to start happening in the highest good for all of us in a sense. For I love you, I've always loved the name of your network, the Soulogy network, because we're going to become more in alignment with our soul. And I think the ones that did the work over the last 12, well, really 12 years, you're really going to see, they're really going to see the, I guess, the fruition of all their work, but all the people around them are going to start seeing it. Because I don't know about you, but I'm seeing people that are waking up that thought I was crazy. You
It's funny because
know?
the commonality of the conversations on the shows this year, but in particular since I turned up the volume in mid-May, have been very similar. And one of those things has been just that, where they're saying that people that used to call them crazy are now calling them up saying, "Hey, can you explain this to me or explain that to me?"
Yeah.
Right? And yeah, and I think that's a very indicative of what's to come. One of the other things that happened in that transmission I got last year in December, coming out of the solstice, in addition to the things that you came to accomplish. Now, these were the things that we did during that 12-year period. We actually seeded uh, in the distortion the things that we're going to run on a more permanent basis, and I see that in what you're saying because even though 25, has taken some getting used to, um, it's been apparent to me that there is a very short lapse between, like you said, the thought and the creation. And there's been a more and more obvious immediate reciprocation of our efforts, which wasn't the way it worked in the previous 12 years because of the distortion we're going against the current. But yeah, I can see that will just continue to happen. And yeah, I think you framed it up real well.
I also think we're letting go of situations and things in our life that we were holding on to so tightly. And, we've allowed, I don't know about you, all, about the people listening, but I allowed relationships in my life that were toxic to stay there. Just because I chalk it up as I wrote a book called Peace Be Still. So I'm patient. And then I realized you can love people and let them go. You can still love them. And you can also know that, and toxic doesn't mean that somebody's a bad person. It means that their energy or their frequency is not matching with yours. And so what that energy of when I put a thought out there and it comes in quicker, it's because my energy is not all over the place. And this happened to me during COVID, very shortly after you and I saw each other in Sarasota and Largo and all the events that we did, is that I started sitting on the couch because I didn't really have much else to do. And I started paying attention to where my energy was at and started looking at, is my energy up here stressed about what they're doing up here in this part of the country or this country, or is it worried about what my friends are doing, why they're not listening, why they're not waking up, all that other kind of stuff, or is it right here in the center? in the now of the moment where I'm at right here. And so I realized my energy was all over the place. And with the idea of I'm being spiritual. And so when I realized that we have to stay here and then we work outwards, then it really starts changing. And I knew that intellectually, but you have to really feel it in your heart. And so, and I'd noticed, I don't know about you, Todd, I'd noticed throughout my life when I really got centered, there was something where the energy of the universe just moved. And so I started saying, well, why does that work? Well, it works because I finally, and my energy finally got clear. And it doesn't sit there and go, well, maybe I shouldn't do this, or maybe I should do that, or as soon as you get clear, and so you're not caught up on your energy being all over the place. So when I did that, that really significantly changed. And I'm noticing it at other people too. I'm noticing where, like you're mentioning, a sense of clarity, or you turned up the fire. Once you turned up the fire, you probably started noticing all these amazing things. Like I just felt you the other day. That's why I messaged you. I said, hey, because we haven't talked in, I mean, other than a message here and there. But I remember our very first conversation. I was sitting in a hospital with my friend in the emergency room, and I was putting on an event here in St. Pete. And you had, I think it was like 2013, something like that. I mean, I don't
Yeah,
even think you
it
started the
was,
network yet.
yeah, dude, you were like one of the first people I met when I came off the street.
Yeah. Yeah. Me in Virginia. And
Yeah.
so,
Um, yeah, I remember having a Zoom with one of the first Zooms I ever did was with Virginia. It was just a private Zoom. It was pretty wild. Um, yeah, and what you're speaking to, I mean, this is something that, like, and here's another thing. The people that I'm collaborating with, that I've collaborated with in the past, it's, the whole year, but really once I turned it up in mid-May, when that creativity started to come out. The other thing that I'm noticing, it's almost like everyone that I'm talking to is the same person. They're just shape shifting.
mhm,
The conversations seem to be linked. The retrospect is the same. The energy is the same. And what you're talking about, I think, is very important because coming out of that 2024, uh, coming out of that cycle of that 12 years, which I think is we're going to learn more and more about. A lot of us, even and really with COVID, and here we go again with the synchronicities and the timing, because that happened for a lot of people. It happened for me. There was a lot of, we were all being confined, so we're spending a lot of time with ourselves. I think that brought in a lot of new intel. It also people were being forced to hang out with people that they lived with, which they might not have been communicating with and thought they were. So there was a whole lot of stuff that really came to the surface. And, for me, the way I look at it now is the whole realm up to that point, and still that exists in the old paradigm, is really a narcissistic realm. It's a realm that shadow bans you, that gaslights you, that tells you do as I say, not as I do. There's superiority. There's we know the effery and all that stuff that's come out with it. So really, the only way you could have a connection in that realm, if you because you hear a lot of people like us over the years will come in and say, well, I was this way, and then I kind of got suppressed, and then I tried to fit in. And that's where the issue started because you can't really communicate rationally in that type of realm. If you try to communicate with a narcissistic frequency, it's an irrational frequency, and there's no way it's going to understand your rationale. So then you try to fit in and be irrational. And so you end up having these codependent, and you use the word toxic, but it's a codependent give or take. I'm going to do this for you. You do this for me. Expectations, this and that. So I think this is what you're talking about. This is what I've come into, and a lot of people around me. I'm starting to hear the same thing and feel the same thing that you're actually emitting and that you're talking about, and that is really um, your it's a basic hermetic principle, as
yeah,
within, without. So what you
yeah,
see in yourself is what you get, and
yeah,
we're starting to be able to accept what's presented to us, understanding it's not some exterior force, it's actually us projecting it.
yeah,
And we're now able to do that without the personal biases and prejudices of others and ourselves, we're able to accept it as the universal code offering that it is in support of our evolution. So yeah, I'm totally resonating with you.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
one of the things is it's interesting because even in our spiritual texts, it tells us that the temple of God is within us. It says in the Bible, it says it in other spiritual texts, it says, and so, but that as well as I do, that the world doesn't believe that, even though they may say it with their words, but they don't believe it. And to me, if the temple of God is within me, or the divine, or whatever you want to call it, the spirit within, why would I pay attention, give more attention to anything outside of me? I would start here first. And then as I'm developing this relationship in here, then I can serve the world in a greater capacity because I'm whole inside. And so what I've found is that we've got everything backwards. We look for love outside of ourselves. Well, if we found love inside of ourselves, likes attract like. We're going to attract in and draw in who we want. But we've got also an idea of what love is. And so, it has to be this way, like you mentioned, in codependent and narcissistic. And so, even in narcissists are afraid, they're terrified. They're terrified that they're going to lose their nourishment that they get from whatever codependent relationships they have. And narcissists will do anything to try to control their world and the person that they're trying to control. And so now on a greater scale, that's the whoever is running the world at a narcissistic level. And that's an energy. There's an energy and a force that wants to keep us from letting our light shine as bright as possible. And everybody here on this planet has a light. Now, it may be very dim inside of them, but everybody has a light, and you can see it starting to open up. And you can always see it. You can see it on a child's eyes when you see the glimmer in their eyes and see the innocence. And each one of us has an innocence. And when that innocence is the part of us that gets excited about our creativity, and it doesn't matter if you're 50 or 60 or 20 years old or 5 years old, we each have this innocence that when we start feeling that creative energy, we get excited. I don't know about you, but I geek out every time I just start getting into a deep, like down what you experienced last night. I'd be exactly where you're at right now because I'd be so excited because I'd like, ooh, this is a new energy I get to process. I get to try to figure this out or feel it is a better term. And
Yeah, I think that's another thing that's becoming obvious too. It's a good point. These whatever you want to call them, these hits that we take now, they still have some sting
right.
because there's a physicality in it. There's something within the body itself that's got to break up. That energy's got to break up. Whatever it might be, implant, whatever the case is. But really, ancestral lineage, all that stuff in our bones, in our cells. But what we're starting to realize too is what you're saying, and they don't last very long. The amount of time that we receive the information or the hit or whatever you want to call it, and the time to process it, integrate, and then apply it is shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter. So we can see through the shadow there is gold, and I think that's another thing that I'm starting to see people talk about, as well as they're de-emphasizing. If I go back 5 years ago on this show, 7 years ago, 3 years ago, you would hear often those people over there are not awake, or those people are narcissistic. There would be this resistance or this divorcing or separation from self of these things that are actually a part of our field, which means they're a part of us.
Mhm.
And so I'm seeing less of that. I'm hearing more people say what you're saying, which is, hey, you know what? Working on Todd, becoming into a greater awareness of what we call Todd here, although it's not localized, right? We know this, is a full-time job. I
Mhm.
don't have time to be pointing fingers, judging, and prejudices and biases, things that I don't know, other than looking at those things and saying, why am I looking at that? If I'm looking at that, then it must be in me, you
Yeah.
know. And I think the way I would conclude that is I grew in leaps and bounds over this 2 year period by understanding that I cannot be an empath, a word that's used quite a bit in these communities, if I can't own my narcissist. They're
Hmm.
one and the same. One doesn't exist without the other one.
Yep.
So we spent our whole time consciously, unconsciously, and then with more consciousness, integrating polarities in a dualistic realm, which just absolutely created multitude of alternate timelines. And this is the kind of stuff that we're bringing to a head now. This is what we've done. We've taken all these threads and we brought them into integration, 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 0 point. Uh, the most, really, in some cases, the most absurd polarities you would never associate with each other, but that's really the road that we're walking, you know? That is the golden path.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, even so funny because I got the yin and yang behind me. And when you think about it, that pink narrow road here in the middle, that's what in Matthew 7 it says there's a path that most people will take and it's wide. And then there's the narrow road that very few will take. Well, that narrow road between the yin and yang is the duality and the polarity that we dance through. If we walk that narrow road, sometimes you're going to fall on one side
Yeah.
and you're going to fall, but there's a spirit in you that will always pull you back up and keep you in balance. I always call it dancing with God, because, the male aspect of the divine will always lead in a sense because it is the physical sense here on the planet. And it'll say, hey, by the way, JR or Todd, hey, don't make that left-hand turn and go forward or whatever, and whatever. And then, but the divine feminine within us will say, hey, fall into your heart right now and really open it up and really experience this moment you're having. And so I found that throughout and sometimes to give yourself grace when you fall into the unhealthy old habits. I'm sure we all have those too, with those unhealthy old habits where you get triggered on something and giving yourself grace and learning from it. And so, like you're mentioning, the narcissistic side of ourselves, and where you might even be gaslighting somebody that you love a little bit, and then you have to pause and go, wait a second,
Well, it takes
stop.
a lot to admit to yourself, much not even considering to someone else. That's
Yeah.
a whole nother. That's not even a chapter. That's a whole nother book.
Oh, yeah.
But to get to a point where you're interfacing, because you know how it goes. You're in a loop until you break the loop and you go further up the spiral. All
Yep.
right. But when you're interfacing and it's getting louder and louder and louder, which is what this energy's been doing the last couple of years more than ever, and even today, okay, if you do something now, what goes around comes around, it's going to come back real quick.
Oh,
But
yeah.
my point is to be able to look at something that's in your face, that's been clearly defined as, let's say, an oppressive energy or victimizing energy or whatever you want to call it, narcissistic energy, is in itself part of the leap because we're making this leap and we're not bringing any of that old stuff with us. It doesn't exist in this higher frequency band. It doesn't. Judgment, prejudice, bias,
Mhm.
shame, forgiveness. There's so many things that aren't coming with us because they're not in our field. But to
Yep.
be able to look at that and say, just the fact that I'm calling that person or that thing what I'm calling, and I understand sometimes a spade is a spade, but my point is that's judgment. That's putting me either in a frame of mind and therefore an energetic trajectory of superiority or inferiority.
Yep.
And this is kind of like the kind of deep dive rabbit holes, the real rabbit holes of the world are not in the conspiratorial disclosure aspects, although those things have their value, but they're not feeding that inner growth other than to tell you that the world isn't what you thought. The
Yep.
the real test is to not allow these externals to put you in a state of, let's say, suspicion or paranoia. These are frequencies that are not coming with us that belong back here in the heavier density, which was part of our journey and that we're now graduating from. So again, I'm in total resonance with you. Thank you. Please continue.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we talk about judgment too, I mean, one of my favorite sayings used to be that my inner spirit gave me is that judgment is the glue that holds the fabric of the illusion together. In other words, what it does is that when you're judging somebody else, you're still it keeps you held in this holding pattern of energy. And so there's an ebb and flow to the universe. And so when you judge another person, you say, "Well, I don't know why Todd's doing that over there. What the heck is he doing?" And then you stop the flow of a divine energy that's creating for you. Because I'm so busy in your garden, but mine's getting weeds in it, and I'm not pruning it and taking care of it, what's going on inside of me. And so one of the things it's a challenge sometimes, but you have to stop and you have to say, every time you go into judgment, this is an opportunity for me to bring my energy back in and say, hey, this is a moment. I just had a moment, and now I'm going to bring it back in and I'm going to look at it. Why did I have that moment? And because it's probably triggering in something in me that I don't want to see. And so, but we get hung up on circumstances and the visual of what's going on in the illusion. I'm talking about the energy of what's happening. And there's a
Yeah.
heaviness inside of us that happens when when we feel insecure or we have a moment or we're in judgment. There's something energetically that's happening in us. It's not the visual that's manifesting outside of us. So
No. And I think that that's another good point you're bringing up too, is, and we just talked about this on the previous show. So we spend a lot of time doing shadow work, all of us, and we want to call it shadow work. Now, and it's kind of shifted in a different direction now. It's a different kind of a landscape. The atmosphere is different since this past winter solstice. But so in the process of doing shadow work, you would identify programs. I had this program because at 3 years old, my mother yelled at me, or, something worse, I got abused, or, and so you have these trauma induced programs or conditioning induced programs, like through the conditioning of, say, elementary school, and how that was all set up for us to be followers, not be creative and so on. But there's another part because the program generated a pattern of behavior,
mhm.
a response system, like lab rats. Okay. And what I found was through my own experience, and I'm still learning, don't get me wrong, and observing others, is that the patterns remained, the behaviors remained, the run, or fight or flight. I mean, the different responses, which could also bring into that arena expectations. If I do this for you, then you're if let's say I do something for you and culturally or whatever, you have a natural response. It's second nature, like riding a bicycle, and you just say yes. That's the one thing a lot of us have learned, right? Somebody says something to you, asks you something, and we said yes. Why? Because we're empaths. We got big hearts. And
Right.
what happened? We got burned. And then we threw the onus on them. And then we became narcissistic because we see them as being not awake. And, so that whole thing, we've gone through all this. So what I'm seeing now is where, for myself, and I'm watching others catch the patterns.
Mhm.
Like, how things will come up one more time and you'll go, oh, wait a minute. Why am I saying this? Why am I doing this? Why am I thinking this? And then all that self damnation and self judgment that you're talking about in terms of like falling off getting off of the pink road, and see that's diminishing too. We're when you get into a space like you were talking about in the Bible quote where you don't have judgment, that starts with yourself. And
Right.
again, we're right back to where you started the show, which is as within, without.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's one of the things that I love because I remember a saying that my mother taught me a long time ago. It's a Mayan saying called En Lakesh,
Yeah.
and it means I am another you. And so if I'm going to judge or condemn or put down another version of myself, what am I doing? And so it starts me down a path of saying, okay, well, what kind of life do I want to have? And to me, I want to be in alignment with my soul. And with that being said, I've done some crazy things in my lifetime. I've done some what I would deem as if I, and my human ego would deem as dumb. And with that being said, I couldn't be who I am today without having all those experiences. All the drugs I've done, all the alcohol I've done, all the parties I've been to, all the things that people would judge me for. However, I'm also a stronger man because of all those kids, because I transmuted all those energies in me that made me not value myself. And one of the reasons why I was living in that type of world is because I didn't value myself. And like many of us, I mean, I would, I've had high up management positions like you did, Todd, and I would sit in these board meetings and really not feel like I was valuable in that board meeting. And when our souls are ancient and we're comparing ourselves to other people that are just as ancient as us based on their titles and their paycheck, to me, that's now it. I don't know about you, over the past couple of years, that's really just become very insignificant.
Yeah, or if it's someone of a lesser, of say from societal conventional wisdom, society's conventional wisdom, someone that's homeless. I was on the streets for a couple of years. I learned that early on. Um, I actually had a really interesting encounter the other night here on the beach in Mexico in this small little town. I go to the beach usually if I can get there early enough for the sun to go down, and I commune with Mother and the universe. And so I was doing this, and I go to a more secluded part of the beach where it's a dark and I don't have all the the light so I can see the stars and see the ocean. And this dude walks in front of me, right? And it doesn't matter if you're in New York City, Mexico, whatever. A lot of people think that it's dangerous here. It's not. That's a lot of propaganda. It's the same as everywhere, in my opinion. But you always have to stay on your toes. I mean, that's just the way it is. You got to be smart. So I'm watching this guy. He's clocking me, and he eventually approaches me and is um, his energy is not good. Let's just put it that way. And it really pissed me off because, and I don't really get pissed off anymore. I'm pretty easygoing, and so I just found it to be rude, and it pissed me off.
Mhm.
And I may have been a little tired or whatever, and I told him to go fuck off, and and I thought, well, I just let me just get my stuff and go. So I started to walk back to the town, and he's clocking me. I get on one side of the street, he gets on the other side of the street, and I'm the old Todd from way back is coming out. I'm like, I want to go say something to this guy. I might punch him.
Mhm.
No, I'm thinking this. I'm not actually going to do it, but I felt that,
Yeah.
and I stopped and I stared at him and I just watched him while I let this play out, and eventually he went on his way. Now the interesting thing was, I was analyzing myself, and I think that speaks to what we're talking about in general and how the world's changed this year. And many of us are in this type of thought, this internal dialogue where we're
Right.
we're holding ourselves accountable and being responsible. So I end up that happens, and I'm walking a bit later. I think it was the next night, and I'm still thinking about it. I'm still thinking. You realize that you were putting this out in the field. It's still active in you. I'm analyzing it, and then all of a sudden, and this is in my mind's eye, the dude appears in front of me, right? And I'm walking and I'm looking at him like, what is this? And then I just see his golden white aura. And
Oh.
to your point, I was now standing soul to soul, and it was very quickly explained to me. This was a contract. It's over and done. It was meant to do what it did for both of you. And it was like, peace be with you. And, no harm, no foul. So that's a very extended description of what I feel is happening now. We're catching ourselves. We're self-sourcing more. We're being really responsible and accountable, and we're not having to try to prove that or explain that to anybody, because really the reality is that just takes away from it.
Yeah.
This is an energy that speaks for itself without words. So this is extraordinary.
And he gave you a beautiful opportunity there because his energy triggered something in you but it gave you the opportunity to make a choice. And when you made the choice, then you saw his soul, his essence. And so, and then you had this beautiful moment that you'll always remember. And there's, I've experienced that myself. We had Virginia and I experienced that in 2012 in the Navajo reservation with a man that we were both being judgmental of. And so eventually she got to see this, but she saw his golden aura come on. She goes, I see you. I see. She goes, I swear it was Buddha standing right in front of me. And he says, it's about time you saw it. And I've had those moments myself where you're looking at somebody, but then you see them as like this jerk or, you know, horrible person, or the what do the kids say now, the Karen. And so then you start talking to them, and then you see the tenderness come through. Just very all of a sudden. Like if it's a man, you'll see the little boy come out or the little girl come out. It could be a 60-year-old man sitting in front of you. But you see that part of themselves that is still lost in there, that they haven't been loving. And so then your compassion comes out, and you realize, because there's a little boy in me that sometimes doesn't always feel, at times in my life hasn't felt valued, didn't felt heard. And that's why the other day it hit me. I was like, life doesn't always get easier, you just get stronger. It's because inside you built this foundation on rock inside of yourself, and the rock is all those choices you've made that's made this inner world a, you chose this over your reactions. You chose to become an observer of the world as opposed to getting involved with, it's like you were talking about the truth or disclosure movement. And I was a part of that myself, and until one day it hit me, that's great that we found out the world is not what we think it is. However, what if I just realized who I was? Because the whole world is geared towards distracting me from what's going on in here. And I don't know about you, but I found the deeper I get in here, the richer my friendships get, the richer my relationship with the people I love. And then the people that weren't meant to be there, they naturally just walked out. I didn't have to do some big thing by saying, get out of my life. They just naturally left. And so, and the opportunities that to do things like you were mentioning earlier, the house to stay in for a couple months. I mean, 2024, I wasn't on the street, but I was renting out a room from a friend. And, at one point I was jumping from one Airbnb. My friend, another friend owned a bunch of Airbnbs, and I was going to the Airbnbs that she had open, and living out of my car basically. And so when you finally realize, there was actually at one point when a friend called me up, and I'm not even sure how I was going to pay my car payment. And they called me up and basically handed me $700 to not only pay my car payment, but have some left over, and said, you don't have to pay me back. So when you have things like this happen, you realize that all these things you're stressed about, all these things you're worried about, there's a force happening that's working in your favor. And when you honor that, when you continue to develop a relationship with it, then more opportunities drop in your lap. And really, then that's why my favorite saying right now is, you can't make that shit up. Because
And we said that for years on this show. Well, I said
yeah,
shift. I try
well,
not to cuss too much. No, I'm kidding. We do a lot of f bombs here. No, it's no big deal.
so and it's you start to go, whoa, that really just happened. And to me, it's exciting,
Yeah.
because I don't know about you all, but for the level of years of doubt, and now you start going into this marriage of, no, I know things are a little chaotic right now, but this too shall pass.
Well, I
And
think you speak to you mentioned the word value. I think this is important.
yeah,
Okay. We talked about insecurity. The basis of, say, narcissism is insecurity. The basis of a bully. And again, if you go to the other side of the perceived equation and look at the empath, well, that person isn't any more or less insecure than that which he's claiming he's not. The only
yeah,
difference is the narcissist will be a bully or will be a kind of a extroverted force, where the other might just shrink and hide. What's the difference? Both
Well,
of
the
these
codependent
are
is just as
right.
abusive as the narcissist.
Well, you know what I'm saying? What I'm
Yeah.
saying is I
Yeah.
think we're now able to have this internal dialogue where we can say, I don't feel valued. And instead of putting the onus on something outside of us,
Yeah.
we're looking at it and going, wait a minute, I don't feel valued. That means I don't value myself.
You got it.
And so we stop, we're kind of like stopping the madness, stopping the cycle. And that is where we put the onus on things outside of us and we work on ourselves, stay in our own lane. And then there's an organic, natural unfoldment that is in alignment with nature. It's our natural nature. And that's what I'm seeing this year is like, like I will do 2 or 3 shows and I'll be a bit tired and I'll, have something on my mind and I'll walk out into the town. And I'm walking in this cobblestone street and there's a horse goes by and a dog runs up to me and a little kid's running down the street barefoot. And you see these families and you see this wholesomeness and unity, and my soul will come in and say, hey, hey, dude, look at this. This is you. Okay. Because I'll at first I'd be like, oh wow, this place is amazing. Then it became, no, this is you. And I'm like, okay, okay. And I'm excited too to what you're saying because this we're just sticking our big toe in the water.
Yeah.
And that's what's mind blowing because the potential of the inner transformation that's occurring, and it's already started because so many people could attest to this with terms of healing, reversals of chronic injuries, et cetera, but also the potential of turning on those things that have been dormant due to our lack of belief in ourselves. And I'm talking about, psychic, paranormal, higher sensitivities and skills and abilities such as teleportation and so on and so on and so on. Because again, we are as within without. Why is all this technology in our face and showing us potential and the reach of intelligence? Because it's reflecting us, and what we contain is infinite, and really the stuff that we see outside of us is like a fly on an elephant's ass. You know what I mean? It's not as big as we think. Everything is upside down. We're not the small one. We're the big force. We are the force. We are the made in the image. Yeah,
Yeah. And people
fascinating.
don't realize that they're giants. Their soul is massive. I had an experience during COVID, probably 2021, several times. I would go into this deep meditation and I was doing shadow work, for which we're going to call it. And I remember getting up off of my couch from where I was meditating. And I felt like, remember Jolly Green Giant, standing over all the people. That's what I felt like. Now I'm a tall man anyways, but I'm towering over the dining room table in my house and the couch. And I just felt like this energy, this really towering over. And I was like, what is that? And I realized it's my soul. And the soul is massive. And so when we even look at the world with our problems, the problems are insignificant in comparison to who we are. And you're absolutely right that one of the things that we do is we get caught up in circumstance, or we get caught up in, the codependent or the empath is just they're manipulative just as much as the narcissist. They may not be as vocal about it, but they're using some form, a lot of times, a form of passive aggressive manipulation where it could be guilt or whatever. Doesn't matter what the emotional manipulation they're using, but it's a form of making it toxic, so to speak. And so what I feel too, it's like, remember the old when you were a kid, you take the two magnets and you try to push the two sides and they push each other apart. Well, if an energy is kind of trying to push you apart, whether it be a circumstance, a job, or a business relationship, or where you're living or whatever, if it's pushing you out, then it's probably let the flow take you. Or it's whatever. I mean, I know you've lived all over, and I've moved around this area that I'm in for quite a few times, and it's because the energy needed to take me somewhere.
Mm.
And so and then where I went, I grew, and I had an experience. And so and each one of those experiences became something pretty cool. So it's one of those things each time. I mean, I was just out in San Diego about a month and a half ago. We were filming a movie out there, and it was very all of a sudden. I just got a phone call, said, "Hey, can you fly to California?" And I had to do my other work at the same time, so I was getting up at like 2:30 in the morning, working until 9 Pacific time, then working on the movie set until 5 Pacific time. But the reality is that the energy took me out there and it opened up new doorways for me. So I think oftentimes we're so afraid of allowing to give up control, I guess is a sense to say it, because we're afraid of losing control in our own life. And when we fall into that energy of flow and the energy, like I didn't know you were in, now that you told me that you were in Mexico, I remember seeing a post about it. I guess what, 6 months ago, a year ago, I can't remember how long. And so, but I've followed you for years, seeing you from Arkansas and Hawaii and those kind of things. And so, but the energy took you where it needed to. And I remember you were in the RV when you were here. And so, I mean, and I think if people would allow themselves to fall in that flow and really allow this energy that's happening guide them, they'll find that they're a part of that. That's not a I don't know about you all, but I had an anger towards it in a sense because I was like, well, I'm not going to have some force that I'm not that tell me what to do. But I
Which is
realized
which
I'm a
which is
part of
so
that.
which is so ironic because through our concessions we're letting an external force that fly on the elephant's ass have control over us. But
Right.
I do relate to what you're saying.
But you are that force.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, we look at the lesser God representation of the matrix or this or that or whatever, the government or whatever, and that's why I was making the joke. But I have what I call come to Jesus meetings with the universe all the time. I had one in the middle of November, and I said, get me the hell out of here. I'm done. Which I hadn't said in a while.
Yeah.
And they said, my soul came in and said, you be careful what you're saying because now it's game time. And I said, oh, okay. But you make a really good point about this control. And I think one of the things that's coming to the surface for us too is the very subtleties and second nature, the inorganic second nature of our conditioning is coming to the surface now, and we're seeing how deep this shift goes, right? Because control, we think of control like in the example you just gave, or control, we give it to a partner, or we give it to a job, or we give it to this or that, an addiction. It could be a lot of different things. But control is also, and if not even at the core more so, to control the narrative, to control your own personal narrative,
Mhm.
to go out of your way to explain who you are, what you do. Now, it's a fine line, and there's
Yeah,
certainly
of course.
in this transition the need to verbalize things so we can make this transition, say, to full telepathy. But the fact is, I have this saying that I use for years. I picked up when I was on the street because I used to be a national director with the largest company in the industry of the field that I was in and a few other companies. And so whenever I would be on the street and I would meet somebody, they'd say, my name's Joe Smith. I'd say, my name's Todd Medina. I used to be a director at such and such company. And then one day I realized, why are you saying that? All right, who are you trying to convince? And this was the mantra that I started to say myself for a few years. Who are you trying to convince? Them or yourself? And the reality is, it's myself. So as you were talking about the compassion and seeing the other person, I started to reverse it as well. And so when I would hear people telling me who they were, I was able to move beyond judgment and understand that they were on the same path I was. And just because they're not happening at the same time on the linear timeline doesn't make one better or worse. There's
Right.
things that I'm doing now, having to deal with now that you dealt with 10 years ago, and vice versa.
Right.
Whatever. This is another big factor. We know that probably around the time COVID hit, time started to do some weird stuff. And it's just gotten weirder and weirder and weirder. And space is now following. So that's another element of this dimension that won't be in this and on this new plane, on this new grid, is the stress and the pressure and the programming of the concept of time and space. I think this is the leap that we're really going to get into. I feel soon, and I'm only going to concern myself with it. But as the individual goes, so goes the collective, and that is, I am not a local consciousness, and we have all had our experiences in dimension and meditation and lucid dreams. Something is breaking down here. Veils are breaking down that are beyond our comprehension, and for me, the ability to see them more clearly, or to see a larger visible light spectrum, or however you want to put it, is based on me giving up control. And that is going deeper and deeper and deeper every single day that I wake up in ways that I didn't know.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, and there's one thing that I know is that when I fall into that service, that point of service or giving up control or whatever you want to call it, it's really just my ego saying, you know what, I surrender. And that's why why it says the meek shall inherit the earth. And because it's with that person that's humble enough to say, you know what, sometimes I have to ask for help, and sometimes I have to be of service, and sometimes I have to be this. There's just this. The best way to describe it is this: it's like this flow or dance, and so it's okay to ask. I ask, hey, it'd be cool if I did this or had this experience, and then you just say, you know what, that or better, and then when it comes into your life, you're like, whoa, or whatever the better was. It's one of those things where I think as we're being creators, let's start asking for peace and truth and love and compassion to come to the planet, and for understanding, awareness. And so, because the awareness helps us heal those aspects of ourselves that are having trouble giving up control. I have this experience every once in a while, getting deep into meditation, and I'll expand my energy out, my electromagnetic field out. And there's a part of me inside of me that says, hold on a second, hold on, don't go out too far. Don't go out too far. Because I don't want to lose myself. And I have to turn back inward and say, we're not losing anybody.
Mhm,
You're still here.
mhm,
We're not going anywhere. You're still a part of it. And so we may be the fly on the wall,
mhm.
but we're also everything that is.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so,
Absolutely. That's a good point too, because one of the things we struggle with, be it a person, place, or thing, is, look, where we're going, there is no possession. There's no mortgages, there's no contracts, there's no trademarks. Everything is what you just said. We have a unique piece of the universal puzzle, but yet, well, we're the drop and we're the ocean, right?
yeah,
But there's, to what you said, has been a big, a kind of a mantra for me for a few years, which is, you know, yeah, this is where I kind of struggle with, like, people talking about boundaries. I get it, but at the end of the day, they're not going to be there either with where we're going. Okay, so in other words, it's an open. We're the free energy of the universe, and so there is no loss. And how can you detach from that which you are always connected to? You know, and there's a reality in that, and that is, like, if you listen to people that have had near death experiences and they have a life review, okay, and in that life review, what ends up happening is they can step in the other's shoes based on whatever they project, thoughts, words, action. It doesn't matter what the intention is. They can feel what the other person felt as a result of the thoughts, words, and actions that, they took. So that's a universal oneness frequency. And it operates, like, kind of like, say, you mentioned the Navajo, or an indigenous village. I remember I did a show with a lady in Australia, and her and her son lived with some Aborigines. And she said they would get up in the morning and nobody would talk. Everybody would just move around like ants. Everybody was moving like in orchestration, like a symphony.
yeah,
And that's how this originated. That's the natural nature of the universe. And so I think as the human is making this transition, like you're talking about, it's important to remember that, we're always connected. We're not going to lose anything. Come together once, you come together forever. I see it a lot like a tourist field. So you have the two sides of the tourist field, and they're both doing this. And so sometimes you and I come together in the middle of that channel, and then we go to the opposite sides. Well, we're no more or less connected or located next to each other or less located on the outside or the inside. It's all the same space. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
yeah, I
Well,
think yeah, and I think what's happened is it's gotten to the point now. You said this earlier. I understand. I forget what you were saying, but I understood this intellectually. Well, I think there's a lot of things that we understand intellectually, but now we're having to walk the talk, and that's what you're talking about. That self accountability, that self responsibility, as within, without, and not just pretty words of BS, but actually applying it. And again, that energy doesn't have to be verbalized because it speaks for itself like a tuning fork, like a singing bowl. And you're right, it's very contagious.
yeah, and it's one of those things where it's like the connection was made. It stopped being like it's like when you learned how to drive. You had to learn how to put your hands on the wheel. You had to learn the mirror had to be like this, and you had to back up a certain way and all that kind of stuff. But eventually it became second nature. And so that's when the connection was made. So for a lot of us that have been doing this work and we understood it intellectually, now the connections are starting to be made. And so we're seeing a difference because what's happened is a lot of these words, like the word boundary that you mentioned earlier, people don't understand the flow of that. And so they think I'm going to set a boundary because I'm tired of this happening in my life. And to me, a boundary is just, hey, my soul needs to stop going in this direction right now and it needs to start flowing in this direction. And, or, hey, I don't, I need a boundary for me is I'm not going to go around um, a party where everybody's doing a bunch of drugs anymore because I don't want to do that anymore because my soul went into a different direction. And so, but people have taken these words and they don't feel them. And so I think that's one of the key things is, we have a left brain and a right brain, so to speak. And in the third dimensional world, if I slap somebody on the hand or even myself, it's going to hurt. Um, but in the larger scale, the spiritual sense, there's an energetic reaction that happens to that. And that may cause, like we were talking about earlier, trauma or resentment or whatever, are like, ouch, what did you do that for? There's a reaction, there's a cause and effect, so to speak. So, but what I would like for people to do is really take a lot of these words and instead of saying them, I want you to start feeling them. And because what I've discovered, people a lot of in the metaphysical world will say things like words are powerful. And I don't agree with that. I think that the energy and the emotions behind what is being said is what's powerful. And I can prove it because if I was to say to a group of people, I was to say one president's name, one group of people would be excited and the other group would be pissed off. And I said another president's name, I'd have the same thing. If I said the word church to a bunch of 18 to 25-year-olds that were out at a club on a Saturday night, hey, you going to church tomorrow? They'd automatically pull back. But if I said it to a bunch of people that went to church every Sunday, get excited because they think about the community and they think of, they don't. And so words have whatever the value we give them and the emotion and the energy behind them is what creates our world around us. And so what we have to do is start going in, like we've been talking about, and start feeling what's happening when we say that. Like mine was I had a big one on God, the word God. And if you said God, even to me 10 years ago, there was a part of me that still thought I was a man with a white flowing beard up in the sky. A very small fraction. There was an energy in there, not the visualization, but there was an energy in there that said, well, this is a guy with a white flowing beard throwing lightning bolts down at me because I had a shot of alcohol at the bar today. And then I realized that because God's inside of me, God doesn't care, but he does care about the energy does care about the abuse that you do to yourself internally. I shouldn't have done that. I love the word I should stop shoulding on my life. and you should have done
Should
that.
shoulda, woulda, coulda, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that's
so
a
it just becomes there's a what I want people to do is get in here and start feeling what's going on in here. Like we're not just the dialogue, but the energy. I mean, the dialogue's perfect too, because we have a comedy going on in our brain most of the time. So but yeah.
yeah, and that's a good point too, because like even another way to prove it, I thought that's where you were going to go with it, but I love your example because that proves it cut and dry right there. But tonality, I can say hello, how are you? I could say a lot of things to you in different tones. You
Hmm.
know, I could say it in an angry tone, and again, these are things that are characteristic, symptomatic of the paradigm that we're transforming from. And I think that's these are the things that are becoming more obvious to us and bringing the questions to a deeper level. Who am I? Why do I do this? You know, where did I come from? What am I doing here? And all that stuff. But a lot of it seems to revolve around human interaction. You know, which it would make sense because regardless of our connection to the elemental plant kingdom, et cetera, physical, non-physical aspects, it's still we're the boots on the ground and we are physical mirrors of each other, which seems to be the object of the game to me because everything else we had coming into this thing, we had sacred union, we had Trinity energy, we had everything, and we may not have known it, but what are we actually trying to achieve here? And I believe it's to reach the same level or to shoot for it, you know, in the physical density that we're in with those physical mirrors that we're playing with. And in order to do that, um, we have to go through and deconstruct, disassemble all these things that we picked up that we thought we thought this is how the world was, and all that different stuff. And yeah, it almost seems mundane when you hold it against the multidimensionality that we are, that the human is the redheaded stepchild at the round table of spirituality, when in reality, it's the most revered one in this moment. In this time and space, we are on point. And and so never underestimate, you know, the power of one unique and equal soul. I mean, there's that's just the way it is. And so it's refreshing to, you know, to talk with you. I'd like to do it some more.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to, I'll hit you up after the first of the year and see where this goes. Why don't you tell us a little bit before we get out of here? Tell us a little bit about your book. Show us the book. Where can we get it? And talk to us about your podcast.
Yeah, so this is it's called The Sovereign Mindset: Unlocking Your Divine Potential. And it really just started kind of the questions that I've been talking about. It started, why do these things keep on happening in a positive light? And what is it that's been changing? You put a prayer out there or something and something wonderful happens and then sometimes it doesn't. And then we can equate all of that to divine timing and divine order, divine plan, all that kind of stuff. But there's a point where our energy is so focused that things just start happening. And so why was that? And so I started going through my own life and writing about all the moments where I chose other energies over my own soul, over my own happiness and my own fulfillment. And so it hit me one day that when you're in alignment with your soul, you're operating because the mind's not in the body. The brain's in the body, the physical body, but the mind is not. And there is a sovereign mind that when you work and flow with that and you're living with that on and walking and talking with it, the force of the universe is in your favor. And it always is. It's always there. And so I just started writing about that. And like I said, it just flowed through. I mean, and now I'm a part of a new streaming network called Ethereal TV. I'm launching a show on there called The Mystic Dialogue, and it's basically going to be having conversations like this, and whether it be a monologue or me interviewing somebody and having a conversation. And it's really for us to start understanding that there is something within us. And sometimes when I first discovered it, I thought, I was like, do I have a being inside of me? There's a being inside of me. And I realized that the being's me. But at the time, you're like wondering. Like I had an experience where something raised my arms up and raised me out of my bed and said, think bigger, and then put me back down on my bed. And I'm like, what the heck is that? Well, it's your soul. It's you. And so when the book is about and the show is about really getting to people to start to look within, have that relationship with themselves, it's actually very simple. I mean, in sales, we used to say, keep it simple, stupid. Well, say you could say that keep it simple, spirit. You don't have to say stupid, but you can say keep it simple. Because we really make spirituality very hard, but it doesn't have to be.
Well, I think that's reflective of the whole trip, isn't it?
Yeah.
We've complicated and convoluted a finite experience when we have a simple, beautiful, infinite alternative.
Yeah. Well, and then you can find me at my website is very easy to find, jeremymcdonald.net.
Mm.
And you can find the book on Amazon and several other places. So
Well, yeah, you might want to put them in the comments, and then I'll put them on the other platforms.
okay.
If you put the links on there, just so keep it simple. And I just want to say to everybody, you know, thank you for joining us for the two shows today. We've got five in the next 2 days. And also thank everybody for the continued love, support, and contributions that allow us to keep doing this every day. And we will see Jeremy again, maybe in January. Would be nice, and kind of compare notes after we go through this the rest of this corridor and into the new year post the solstice. Yeah, you guys give Jeremy a shout. He'll put his links up, and I'll put him on the other platforms, and we'll see him again.
Thanks, Todd. It was good to catch up with you, and I'm sure we'll be talking soon.
All right, brother, you take care. All
All right.
right. Peace
Bye-bye.
out. Thank